It was a blistering summer afternoon, the kind where the heat clings to you like a heavy blanket. In the small southern town of Willow Creek, life ambled along at its usual slow pace. Here, everyone seemed to know everyone, at least by face, if not by name. The local corner grocery store wasn't just a place to buy food, it was the heart of the community. Gossip flowed freely, and neighbors caught up on the latest news about the town, the economy, and, of course, the ever-changing weather. For Colonel William Mathis, this day felt like a return to simpler times. After dedicating over 35 years to the U.S. Army, Mathis had finally retired. His career had been nothing short of remarkable, rising from a fresh-faced second lieutenant to a high-ranking officer. He was a man who carried himself with quiet dignity and strength, his presence exuding discipline and authority. Today, however, he wore none of the medals or insignias that once commanded respect. Instead, he was dressed in a black polo shirt and jeans, blending into the fabric of civilian life. Colonel Mathis parked his dark blue Ford Expedition in the lot of Willow Creek Grocery. He turned off the engine, savoring a moment of stillness before stepping out into the sweltering heat. The air was thick, almost oppressive, but there was a quiet charm in this slower pace of life. Mathis had come here to enjoy the peace he'd earned after years of service. Officer Darren Cole sat in his patrol car across the street, scanning the area with a watchful eye. Cole was relatively new to the town, having transferred 6 months earlier. Ambitious, but often overly zealous, he had already gained a reputation for being rigid and, at times, unfairly suspicious of the town's black residents. His insecurity often bled into his work, making him more prone to overcompensation. When Colonel Mathis stepped out of his car, Cole's gaze zeroed in on him. Something about the man's confidence, his upright posture, the effortless command in his movements, immediately caught Cole's attention. To Cole, Mathis didn't fit the image of someone who should be driving such a nice vehicle or walking with such assurance. He decided to act. Cole exited his patrol car, squaring his shoulders as he approached the grocery store lot. "Hey, you," he barked, his tone sharp and authoritative. Colonel Mathis paused mid-step, turning to face the voice. For a moment, he wasn't sure who the officer was addressing. "Yes, you," Cole repeated, his voice louder now. "In the black shirt. What are you doing here?" Mathis furrowed his brow, puzzled. The officer's tone and body language made it clear this wasn't a friendly interaction. "Is there a problem, officer?" Mathis asked, his voice calm but firm. Cole's eyes narrowed. "Yeah, there's a problem," he said, stepping closer. "This area isn't for people like you. Let me see your ID." The words hit Mathis like a slap. Years of discipline kept his emotions in check, but inside, a familiar tension began to rise. "I'm here to pick up groceries," he replied evenly, "just like everyone else." Cole wasn't satisfied. "I said, let me see your ID. Now," he demanded, his voice hardening with each word. Mathis took a measured breath. "My ID is in my car," he said, maintaining his composure. "If you need it, I can get it for you." But Cole wasn't looking for resolution. "Didn't you hear me?" he snapped. Without warning, he grabbed Mathis's arm and twisted it behind his back. The forceful action caused murmurs to ripple through the parking lot as onlookers began to take notice. A crowd started to gather, their voices a mix of confusion and disbelief. Many in Willow Creek knew Colonel Mathis well. To them, he wasn't just another face. He was a hero, a man who had dedicated his life to serving his country with honor. "That's Colonel Mathis," someone murmured in the crowd. "What's he done to deserve this?" More people began pulling out their phones, recording the scene. The sight of a white officer detaining a black man who clearly wasn't resisting struck a nerve. Among the bystanders were veterans who had served alongside Mathis. Their shock turned to anger as they watched their former comrade humiliated in front of the town. "Let him go," an elderly woman shouted. "He's a decorated officer." Cole, however, ignored the rising voices. He was too consumed by the intoxicating sense of control to consider the consequences. "You're under arrest for disobeying an officer," he declared, snapping the handcuffs tighter onto Mathis's wrists. Moments later, Another patrol car pulled into the lot. Out stepped Sergeant Michael Hayes, a seasoned officer who had served the town for over a decade. The sight of the growing crowd and the commotion immediately put him on edge. "What's going on here?" Hayes called out as he approached. Cole turned, his expression smug. "Just dealing with a suspect," he said. Hayes's eyes landed on Mathis, and recognition dawned immediately. "Colonel Mathis," he exclaimed, disbelief coloring his voice. He pushed past Cole and stepped closer. "Take those cuffs off him. Now." Cole froze, his confidence evaporating. I didn't know who he was," he stammered, fumbling with the handcuffs. As the restraints fell away, Mathis straightened his posture, his composure unshaken despite the humiliation. The crowd, which had grown larger, erupted into applause and cheers. "That's our colonel," someone shouted. Sergeant Hayes turned to Cole, his voice sharp with anger. "What were you thinking? You've just handcuffed a decorated veteran, a man who's served this country longer than you've been alive." Cole looked down, his face pale. "I didn't know," he mumbled weakly. Hayes shook his head. Addressing the crowd, "Officer Cole will be suspended immediately, pending an investigation." The tension in the air began to dissipate, but the damage had been done. As Cole stood there, head bowed, he realized his actions might have cost him his career. Meanwhile, Mathis turned to the gathered crowd, raising a hand to calm them. "We all make mistakes," he said, his voice steady and resonant. "But it's our duty to learn from them. Justice isn't about power or bias, it's about fairness." The ripple effect. The incident didn't stay confined to Willow Creek. Footage from the bystanders' phones quickly spread on social media, sparking a nationwide conversation about racial bias in law enforcement. News outlets picked up the story, framing Colonel Mathis as a symbol of dignity and resilience in the face of injustice. Cole was dismissed from the force after an internal review. He issued a public apology, though it was met with mixed reactions. For some, it was too little, too late. For others, it was a necessary first step toward accountability. Colonel Mathis, however, didn't let the incident define him. He continued his work advocating for veterans and social justice, using his newfound platform to speak out against systemic bias. His calm and composed response to the situation became an inspiration to many, proving that strength of character could overcome even the most egregious acts of prejudice. The transformation of Willow Creek. In the weeks and months that followed, the town of Willow Creek underwent a reckoning. Community leaders organized forums to address racial tension and foster dialogue between residents. Training programs were implemented for law enforcement, emphasizing empathy and de-escalation techniques. Colonel Mathis played an active role in these efforts, bridging divides and fostering understanding. His presence served as a reminder that change was possible, even in the face of deeply rooted prejudice. For Willow Creek, the incident at the grocery store became more than just a story. It became a turning point, a catalyst for growth, accountability, and hope.